Welcome back, I'm Alex, and we're once again with this brand new hard-hitting 6.7 liter Cummins turbo diesel engine. And well, despite me having a little bit of a soft spot for this inline 6 engine, inline 6 engines are the best. She's not perfect, and today I'm going to talk about some things that I don't necessarily like about this new Cummins engine. I think all the HD diesel engines in the pickup truck segment are very well built, and this Cummins is no exception. However, one thing that I have really noticed over the years is that this Cummins engine has sort of veered away from its commercial-based ISB 6.7 liter engine, and this is sort of like a separate performance-based lighter-duty diesel engine that comes in these trucks. So here is a true commercial-grade Cummins in Cummins red slapped in this school bus chassis here. We got ourselves a rear gear train. So this thing's running flat tappet lifters. It's also hooked up to a true Allison transmission. We also have a completely different emission system on this engine, as well as this engine being significantly detuned. In fact, this 6.7 Cummins is only running at 220 horsepower. So it could strongly be argued that the 6.7 Cummins in the pickup trucks are a performance-based engine with running an extra 220 horsepower as well as an extra 500 pound-feet of torque. And just based upon the power ratings, which engine do you guys think is going to last longer? You guys can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but the commercial engine and the engine in the pickup trucks are at this point pretty significantly different. The beautiful thing about this time of year is that the sun goes down at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we're gonna get this truck into the shop where we're not gonna lose the light, and we might hurt some feelings along the way. Oh, we're not gonna hurt anyone's feelings, at least not that much. And getting right into it, the first thing that would concern me with this brand new 2025 Cummins is lifters, baby. A very naughty word with the older 19 to 24 Cummins engines. And probably rightfully so, because those engines did experience a number of lifter problems. And, well, it seems like Cummins is using the same style of lifter in this brand new engine, and that could be a little bit concerning. I have made a full video talking about the Cummins lifter problem about a year ago, and I'll link that down in the description. But from 1989 to 2018, Cummins used flat tappet solid lifters. Very simple and therefore pretty darn reliable. It's just a single piece of metal. Here's your good old push rod, and as the cam lobe comes around, pushes up on the flat tappet lifter, pushes up on that push rod, and the selected valve opens up. Very simple design, very reliable design. And that all changed in 2019 when Cummins went to a hydraulic roller lifter. Cummins says the main reason why they switched to the hydraulic roller lifter is to reduce maintenance on these engines. And there certainly is some truth to that, because the 6.7 Cummins with the solid flat tappet lifters need to get their valve trains adjusted every 150,000 miles to make sure the valve train is or has the appropriate lash on it. Whereas hydraulic roller lifters, like in this engine, use engine oil to hydraulically adjust the valve train to spec every time the engine turns on. Although, as we did see, it did result in some valve train failures. And as I mentioned, this commercial grade engine is using flat tappet style lifters, and you could probably guess that this engine is not experiencing valve train issues like the engines in the Ram trucks. And according to Cummins, one of the main reasons why those engines in the Ram trucks were failing was because owners were using improper weight oil. This TSB, which came out in 2023, basically just states which engine oil weight you are supposed to be using with your engine. So if you have a 2019 plus model Cummins, you need to be running 10W30. All of the older engines ran 15W40, some thicker weight oil, and apparently some people were running the thicker weight oil in these newer engines, which is not recommended. Why? Because this little snippet down here, thicker weight oil cannot be used because of the new design valve train of these engines. If this oil is used, it will cause deposits to form in the hydraulic valve lash adjusters, leading to undesirable noise and or engine damage. So is oil viscosity solely to blame for the lifter failures on the previous gen engines? that's up for debate in my mind. But with the release of this engine, I thought for sure Cummins would address this valve train, at least mention potentially a valve train upgrade, but they really haven't said anything in terms of lifters or valve train upgrades with this engine. Allegedly, Cummins and Stellantis have never had a single sourced supplier for these hydraulic roller lifters, and allegedly in 2022 there was up to 5 different hydraulic roller lifter suppliers, some of which were providing better levels of quality. And could that be why the 2022 Cummins trucks, for whatever reason, were having more frequent lifter failures? Who really knows? None of this is confirmed, but it is interesting. Allegedly, for these new 2025 Cummins engines, Cummins and Stellantis were trying to narrow down their suppliers for high quality lifters and potentially even switched suppliers for the 2025 engine. So hopefully moving forward, we have far less lifter failures with higher quality suppliers supplying lifters to this engine. Something I wasn't aware of is that the suppliers and component sourcing for Cummins is all proprietary, and usually the suppliers are in a non-disclosure agreement, so we really never end up knowing who actually supplied lifters to these Cummins engines. I hear a lot of people saying that Cummins should have gone back to a flat tappet lifter, and I don't necessarily disagree in terms of a reliability standpoint, but in terms of a performance standpoint, a roller lifter is far superior. First of all, you're going to have reduced friction, which is going to make the engine more efficient. Secondly, you can run more aggressive cam profiles as well as higher lift. So having roller lifters in this engine is going to give a lot better performance, which I think people want as well. But come on, Alex, hydraulic roller lifters are just, they're not reliable. And well, it's not necessarily true, because this 7.3 liter POWERSTROKE in my 95 F350, well, it uses hydraulic roller lifters, and these 7.3s are pretty damn reliable engines. In fact, the valve trains on these international engines are extremely reliable. So you can make a very reliable diesel engine with hydraulic roller lifters. It ultimately comes down to the manufacturer, the supplier, supplying high quality, strong components. I think that's what's missing here. Moral of the story is I'm not totally against Cummins using hydraulic roller lifters in this new 2025 engine. I just think they're somewhat unproven at this point, given the failures we saw with the old engine. And I just would have really appreciated if Cummins came out and addressed the problem, saying that we know it was an issue, and with this new engine, we have upgraded, we've addressed, we've changed suppliers, something. Give me something to let me know or feel more confident that the lifters in this engine are going to be better off than what they were previously. But I guess maybe then they would have to admit that the lifter failures were not only caused by people running the wrong weight of oil, and maybe that could get a little bit complicated for them. So I don't know. Hold the phone, because this was sent to me after I finished filming, and it does shed some light on the fact that Cummins has actually implemented a little bit of a redesign to the valve train on the 2025 Plus engines, with new push rods as well as new rocker arms, ideally to accommodate for more oil, creating a funnel-like design in these new rods. And we can confirm this with new part numbers for both the rocker arm and the push rods. All very exciting stuff. Furthermore, Dave's Auto Center has an excellent short reel demonstrating exactly this, and I'll link that video down below. They always do a great job. But it is interesting that Cummins really didn't touch on the fact that there was indeed a valve train redesign or an upgrade. Maybe it's not the flashiest upgrade, so it was left off the old marketing spec sheet. But to me, it is certainly a step in the right direction, and we'll see if this has any impact on lifter problems moving forward. Another thing that could be a little bit of a reliability question in the future is Cummins switching from a grid heater to glow plugs. And yes, there is the argument that glow plugs are better at helping this engine start in the cold. Sure. All right, here we go. She's really taking her time. I don't know if she's gonna start. At least. Holy! I would much rather have a single grid heater on a single circuit than having 6 individual glow plugs on 6 individual circuits. Is it the end of the world having glow plugs? No, it's just more of a personal preference for me. And well, how could we not talk about it? Yes, Cummins did have issues with their heater grids, specifically the heater grid bolt falling off or rotting off and falling into the engine, usually taking out the number 6 cylinder. Not good. So it definitely needed to be reworked, but I would have rather seen Cummins put a new heater grid solution into this engine rather than going with 6 individual glow plugs. Let me know what you guys think about that. Another common issue with the Cummins engines is the VGT actuator on the turbos failing, and well, it resides right in here, and I'll get you guys in there in a second, but from these eyes, it looks pretty much identical to all the other VGT actuators that Cummins has used for years now. So this right here is, well, this is your turbo, and this is your VGT turbo actuator. And I have replaced many of these over the years. For whatever reason, they just, I don't know, they fail somewhat often. It's a common failure point, let's say that. And, you know, they are sort of in a tight spot, which can be frustrating, but also is these hex bolts here. So these bolts go through the actual actuator and then into the housing of the turbo. And well, this is a brand new engine, so these things look nice and clean, but with the climate we live in, with salt and snow and road grime, these things are all often full of crap, and they often get seized in here in this aluminum housing, and sometimes they actually snap off, and then you're into usually taking the turbo off, and it becomes a pretty nasty job. So it would have been cool to see Cummins, I don't know, update this design a little bit. Who knows, the internals could be a little bit different, but from the outside it looks pretty much the same as any other VGT on a Cummins or a Holset turbo. The next thing that caught my eye is what Cummins and Stellantis said their main priority was when upgrading and building this new engine, and it was to increase fuel economy and reduce emissions, something we've heard a lot lately, and it is a cautionary tale because from what I've seen, typically when manufacturers are heavily focused on efficiency and reducing emissions, stuff like reliability, longevity, durability, strength sort of gets put on the back burner. And I'm not saying that's what Cummins has done with this engine, but it was a little bit alarming when I read that, because if I was buying a diesel engine, I would want Cummins to be saying, we are building the most durable, long-lasting diesel engine in the market. And that's what I would have rather have heard about this 2025 engine, but that's not what they said. Now, I completely understand why they said that. Cummins did just get fined for a lot of money for sort of trying to sidestep some emission regulations with their previous Cummins engines in these trucks. So I can very much understand why Cummins is focused on making sure that these engines are emission compliant. And we can see that with the brand new emission system that Cummins has put onto this truck. And hopefully that does lead to some better reliability. Seeing what has happened in the 1500 truck market with a lot of manufacturers putting out engines that are really going for that efficiency and lowered emissions, we see some of those engines having a lot of reliability problems. The 3.4 liter iForce Max is a perfect example. The GM V8s are another perfect example of trying to get all that efficiency while sort of shooing reliability out of the way. One thing I would have loved to have seen Cummins do, since they did more or less rework the entire emission system, including the EGR system, they tweaked that a little bit. I would have loved to see them pull EGR gases from after the diesel particulate filter, and that is what the 3-liter Duramax does when the engine gets warm and the emission system get warm. The EGR gases are actually pulled after the diesel particulate filter, meaning that there is no soot or carbon going back into the engine. And I think that is a fantastic idea. These Cummins engines, they just run very sooty for whatever reason, and a lot of times the heater grids, the EGR valves on the previous generation engines, they would just become clogged solid with soot. So it would have been cool to see Cummins sort of try and make the EGR system not pump as much soot back into the engine, but it is what it is. In my opinion, the EGR system is the most damaging to your engine because it is directly putting exhaust gases, which are full of carbon and soot, back through your engine. There are some that say soot is not really an abrasive, but I sort of disagree with that. And, you know, I've been into enough Cummins engines, enough intakes where you pull the intake off and it's just full of soot, and it can't be healthy for these engines. So that's the reason why I would have loved to have seen Cummins sort of try and figure out a different solution for their EGR gases. So is this engine a perfect engine? Absolutely not. No engine is. And it really is still too early to tell where the common failure points will be on this engine, but I'm sure there will be a few. Are there some things that I wish Cummins addressed with this new updated engine? Absolutely. But overall, I'm pretty high up on this engine. I think it should be a very reliable platform, especially now that there is the ZF 8-speed behind this engine. I think people are going to be very satisfied, and it makes these Ram HD trucks very competitive in the segment, in my opinion. You guys can let me know what you think. Obviously, if you did like the video, don't forget to leave that thumbs up. And if you think I missed something, feel free to let me know. I always like hearing from you guys, as well as real world owners. If you've owned one of these brand new 2025 Cummins, how has it been to you so far? Do you like it? Do you wish you got a Ford? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, because we'd love to have you on board. Anyways, enough of me. We'll see you in the next freaking video, guys.